Tonight, we are going to talk about ethno-nationalism. Now, I know what you're going to say. Yizz, this is edgy as fuck, don't do it. Okay, well, nobody watches me anyway, and Susan WikiWiki can go fuck herself. I don't care. I'm going to be posting this on BitChute too, like always. So, the reason I want to talk about ethno-nationalism is because of what a vilified phrase it's become, even though it essentially just means nationalism. Tonight, I have prepared 4 specific arguments / talking points to go over that hopefully will get the viewer to understand better why the word ethno-nationalism has become a globalist dog whistle, for lack of a better phrase, and why essentially saying nationalism equates directly to ethno-nationalism and sort of makes the whole concept of civic nationalism effervescent or a meaningless step or a way to distance oneself from the villainized group that those against nationalism have shoved everyone nationalistic into, i.e. the alt-right or scary, dangerous ethno-nationalists. So, without further ado, tonight on Eunuch Corner Club, we are going to go over the 4 main arguments I have come up for pro-nationalism. Number 1 is ethno-nationalism is nationalism. Why is that? Well, many people have always said politics is downstream from culture. Well, what is culture? Culture is people. A nation is people. A nation isn't a state. A nation isn't a conglomerate of global interests. A nation isn't even the businesses that make it up. A nation is the people that are bound together by a mixture of things: cultural norms, tradition, religion, racial genotype and phenotype, and a breadth of other experiences and innate intrinsic traits of people that have to live in an area that share an ecology. That's a nation. Those people create things in service of them that embolden, strengthen, or in another way you could say, exemplify what it means to be a part of that nation. Good example is the American Constitution. Why are a lot of Americans, maybe myself, so loudmouthed, pig-headed, abrasive with their language, love guns, love libertarian values, get off my bottom land, you can't tell me what to do, you ain't the boss of me? Well, because that's our culture. That is our national heritage. That's our ethnic heritage. Being here in America, growing up here for the last several generations, we split away from England. We split away, we codified a constitution based on liberty, independence, and the right for a man to do what he wants and to pursue life, liberty, happiness, and all that good stuff. That is an intrinsic part of being an American. It's not necessarily an intrinsic part of race. That's not an intrinsic part of someone who is white that might live on an island somewhere in the cold North Waters. It might not be an intrinsic part of someone who has spent centuries under authoritarian rule, maybe in Eastern Europe or in Russia. So, race is only a component of nationalism. All nationalism is ethno-nationalism because nationalism itself requires a passion, a patriotism, an urge, a belief in your societal values that make up the nation. That's your ethnicity. If you live in Saudi Arabia and you believe that you should live under the laws of Muhammad the Prophet, and you want your nation and the people around you to all be Muslim and have a strong Muslim community and a state government and a military that serves that people, you're the same kind of nationalist as someone here in America who loves the Constitution, wants to drink beer every Sunday and watch football, and wants you to stay off their bottom land or they'll shoot you with a shotgun. That's the same kind of ethno-nationalism of that so-called redneck American as is the Sharia law-living Muslim person in Saudi Arabia. It is the exact same kind of nationalism. One is vilified and one is treated as acceptable and even praised by establishment globalist powers, namely through their mouthpieces, their useful idiots, the media. Civic nationalism, the reason that is ephemeral is because the civic part, the state part, that is created by the people of the nation. You are allowed to participate if you're an immigrant. You can be part of that, but you are integrating into the ethnicity, into the culture, into the nation that the ethnic people that were already there and already established had set up. So if you're a civic nationalist, that's saying, I enjoy the benefits of all that came before me, and this state that the nation has built. So at that point, you're just a nationalist. An ethno-nationalist and a civic nationalist, essentially, I think, are the same thing. They're just either confused or dishonest about certain elements of what makes them really like and appreciate and want the culture they're in to persist. So you can say to me, I'm a civic nationalist because race doesn't matter to me. Okay? Race doesn't matter to me either, but I'm a nationalist. And it is my ethnicity that created the culture and the systems and everything that made the life that has allowed me, a loud-mouthed, half-gay, intersex tranny, to have a wonderful place to live in safety, protected under the law, to where as long as I don't go out of my way to persuade anyone's children to turn to gayness or whatever, and as long as I don't try to upset the pursuit of happiness of others, I'm legally protected to be whatever kind of miscreant or degenerate that I want, right? Well, that's great. In the vast majority of countries in the world, I don't have any of those liberties and freedoms. So I love this place. I'm an American nationalist because of that society that was built, right? So am I an ethno-nationalist? Sort of, yeah, because it's the ethnicity of the disparate white peoples of Europe that came together to make America, and it's predominantly a white nation, ran by white people, and white is a race, not an ethnicity, let us forget. Ethnicity is defined as thus. So as you see, a skin color or a human genotype is only a part of the recipe for making an ethnicity. So if you're a civic nationalist and you say, well, I don't care about the race element, well, you have to care about the rest of the elements of the ethnicity because you're saying you do because of all the trappings that you have, all the amenities that you have in the culture you're in that you love and you have national pride about. They come directly from the ethnicity, from the nation, which is the people. With all their customs and religions and everything that came before that, that is being a nationalist. So whether you're a civic nationalist, an ethno-nationalist, or whatever you want to call yourself, it all essentially means the same thing. You see great value in and take pride in being part of that culture, that nation, that makes your entire society functioning good. That is my opening argument of the four. Number 2, nationalism is healthy, natural, human, and normal. Going back as long as you want to in history, people have banded together because of commonality. Commonality due to race, commonality due to religion, commonality due to persecution even. And through this, they have created their own societal structures, and in that, they take pride because they feel safe, connected, and live a healthy human life mirrored to them, enforced by the others around them who have similar or exact beliefs, behavior patterns, and one could even say biology. Because if you take someone who is a Neanderthal caveman of however many hundreds of thousands of years ago we go back, and take that person from a cold, harsh environment and then throw them into the tall African humans that live in a hot, flat land, that person is not going to feel biologically connected to that area. The way that they've evolved neurologically and physiologically to engage with the environment around them for safety and prosperity is not going to jive. And if you advance hundreds of thousands of years after that proto-state of human beings, the natural evolution, the emergent evolution of state, values, religion that humans have codified, they are also part of our biology. They are inseparable of what we are physiologically and neurologically. Everything in psychology and neurology backs that up. No one worth their salt in psychology, neurology, behavioral sciences, any of that says any trait is 100% nature or 100% nurture. We are all a mix of the two things. Even something as extreme as being a psychotic serial murderer, right? That is a neurological trait. Those people can get medicine, help, counseling, and be put into a life to where they don't manifest as psychotic axe murderers or something even darker that I don't even want to say on this channel. Even somebody as messed up neurologically as that can still be influenced somewhat by nurture, which is the people around them, the society around them. So going to a much less ugly extreme than that, people have different propensities. Some people are naturally good at being loudmouth braggarts and wanting attention. Maybe some of us make YouTube channels. Other people are naturally shy and timid. They don't want to be in front of a camera. They don't want to give speeches. But someone like me or someone like them can take classes or go through certain experiences in life that teach them to temper those traits, to embolden their shyness, to temper being a loudmouth braggart. So no matter what trait you look at among humans, it's a mixture of nature and nurture. But you can never remove the nature element. So that is why I say nationalism, because it's always manifested in every group of peoples as far back as we can study the history of humankind. They have banded together around what they create because of what they are and what their needs are. That's why I say nationalism is natural, is part of the human experience. Moving from that, the reason I say it's healthy is because everything in psychology agrees. If you live in a way where the people around you support you and you don't feel threatened or at risk from being around them, you live a healthier psychological life. Number two, if you live in a community where people share values and share language and share religion, all of those little tick boxes add to overall mental health and the productivity of the person. And again, you can look anywhere for this. You can listen to Stefan Molyneux. You can listen to Jordan Peterson. You can listen to Sam Harris. Three people of arguably big brain ideas that come from philosophy and psychology. They talk about this stuff all the time. This is accepted behavioral psychological fact that the more communal connection and sympathy that a person has with the people in their immediate circle and in their extended community circle, the healthier they are, the more productive they are, and the better likelihood they have to reproduce, to make more, to build healthy families, and to raise children. And so nationalism is conducive to that. If you have most people in your area marching to basically the same tune when it comes to civics, when it comes to religion, when it comes to the laws of the land, how they want to live, why they want to live, then those people exponentially have more children, have a stronger, healthier experience, and pass on more of that positivity to the children and their grandchildren that come after them. And so again here, making the difference between civic nationalism, ethno-nationalism, and just the word nationalism, it all sort of grays into just nationalism. Because whether or not you believe that the strength and the positive traits of your community come from civics, come from a non-ethnic, non-racial component, or whether you believe that ethnically your religion, your race, the way you've lived, your people, your bloodline are the ones responsible for those things, you're both still liking and enjoying the benefits of those same things and want them to persist. And those are for positive, good reasons, not racist or bigoted, hateful reasons. All the reasons that I've mentioned are healthy, positive reasons that I would think every group and every ethnicity around the world on the third rock here would believe are good values that lead to good things. Muslim, Jew, Chinese, Australian, wherever you are, if the people around you mostly march to the same tune and people there feel connected and healthy, they're going to have better children, a healthier economy, and move forward into a better future for them. The more disparate a people become, and again, whether Chinese or Muslim or Western or whatever, the less productive, the less healthy, the higher the suicide rate, the higher the unemployment rate, that kind of thing. It's almost immaterial to differentiate between civic nationalism and ethno-nationalism. That's why I think we should just drop all of that together. And if you care about the way of life that made the society you live in and all of its elements, its racial elements, its religious elements, all of the elements, if you like those things or the bulk of those things and wish to see them persist and not broken down and discarded away in sake of a ever-growing GDP in pursuit of attracting international corporate interests to your area to bring in more jobs, then you're probably some kind of nationalist, at least tepidly if you don't even put the label on it. And I think that most people on planet Earth qualify as that, don't you? And that brings me to number 3. The economy, which I just mentioned. Global economy, local economy, free trade enterprise, investments, banking, all of that good stuff. Now, you might say, Yizz, the explosion of globalist capitalism, the crony capitalism or crapitalism or whatever you want to call it, the explosion of that has definitely led to an increase on planet Earth of food availability, prosperity, global communications, and that sort of thing. Are those things good? I think arguably, yes, But here's the thing. If America and other nations that were emergent as technological dominant powers after the war era of the 20th century, if they would have focused nationalistically and not fallen to capitalism of globalist interests that don't care about a people and we're all just numbers to be plugged into a wage slave equation for greater GDP, if they wouldn't have gone that route and would have instead focused inward on the nations to improve them, there still would have eventually been spillover, especially because nations that led the world in technology, namely the UK, France, Germany, America, Canada, Japan, these places all allowed people to come on student visas, on work visas, to learn, to grow, to develop the skills it would take to implement that technology in their homelands. They could have come here, learned from us, or even purchased our technology and gone back to their lands. They could have created that in their own nations, and I think, even if we didn't have the last 60 years of emergent global capitalism, that we still would have seen an emergent boom in technological availability of food and communications and all that stuff. I still think we would have seen it. It might have taken another generation, but I still think it would have arrived all the same, and I think it would have arrived in a much healthier, more holistic way that would not be so destructive and erosive. That's a good word for this. It would not have eroded the lesser countries. And I don't mean that in a spiritual way. I mean lesser in technological advancement or business advancement. I don't think that it would have eroded those countries, especially in Africa, so badly. Because China, for all of its faults, it is really good at imitating and producing things better, but not creating on its own. And as such, showing the world the way of crony global capitalism, China said, we're going to get us some of that. And so what did they do? They started sinking their claws into anything they could get a hold of. And so a lot of really rapacious, nasty stuff at the hands of China riddles Africa, Southeast Asia, and is even reaching its dirty hands and corrupting and trying to take away from even powerful nations now. China has grown into an amazing soft power. And I don't think that it is a direct military threat yet to the peace on earth that we kind of have through the hegemony of America, but it's getting close. And so I think that that could have been avoided if we would have had a more nationalistic push in the last 60 years instead of a let's take a single way and a single business around the world in rapid succession. I think that would have been healthier for all. Now, the second part of this topic is why I think nationalism is superior for a nation's economy and financial strength than, let's call it not nationalism. Anything that is not nationalism for this. Communism, regular neoliberalism, globalist crap, any of that stuff. The reason that I think nationalism is superior for business, trade, money, and people's financial investments is because you're not going to have an endless stream of migrants lowering wages and expatriating money and funds out of the nation. All that would stay in the nation, right? Or at least a lot more of it than does now. So you don't have a lot of that labor reduction, labor lessening, and you also don't have a lot of that earned money that comes from a nation's economy being siphoned out of it. I think that's bad and harmful. A little bit of that's always going to happen, but at a migrant level, it happens a ton. And at the top end, from these capitalist, international corporations, it happens too. They're going to come in, they're going to create a lot of work, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And let's say you live in, the Sudan, right? And some international corporation comes and, we're going to make your place better. Look, here, have a Starbucks, have a McDonald's, have a bunch of jobs. How much money, how much value of those people who live in Sudan that work at that plant or whatever, how much of that money do you think that global corporation puts into the infrastructure of the people of Sudan, into the nation of Sudan, or wherever the hell it is? They don't. They siphon it out just like immigrants send out some of their money when they come to a bigger, more technologically powerful nation. So just on the money, income, profit margin alone, I think that it's healthier and wiser for economies to have a more nationalistic focus, to kick out the capitalism. Another reason why I think nationalism is better for money is because of investments and retirement. Look what we've seen in the last 30 years. We've seen where they're in like in the banking industry, for example. You have used to have had 14, 16, 18, 20 major banking corporations, and they've umbrellaed up to 4. I think it's 4 now. Every time you have an umbrella up, the umbrella gets bigger and reaches out to find more, to be over more, right? So they have less of an incentive to care about the value of lives, the respectability and reputation that a plant or an office has in its immediate area. Because if you're a corporation and you have offices and you pool from workers out of 40 different countries, let's say that you work some kind of big plastic production plant in America, right? Well, 50 or 60 years ago, it might have been worthwhile financially for the business that operated that plant to have local support and local communities to really respect them and know that, hey, if you go work for that guy or you go work for that plant, they're going to treat you right. They're going to pay you a good wage. They're going to make sure your wife and your kids have enough money to have all the food on the table they need, to good clothes, to pay for them to go to good schools. Now where are we? You're lucky if you even get a pension. And you're lucky if you even get health insurance worth half a shit anyway from these corporations. It's like, oh yeah, you can garnish your paycheck by $300 or $400 a month to get shit coverage insurance to where you have a $5,000 deductible on everything. So unless you have a major injury or something, it's like you don't have insurance at all. Aren't you lucky you have that? Aren't you glad you work for us? I digress. I get worked up talking about that stuff. So I think that's another reason nationalism would work better for communities of a people. For the economy of the people, rather, because you're going to force businesses to actually care again. Now, how do you do that? How do you use enforcement without being violent and without taking away people's rights? That leads me to argument number 4. Yes, where the rubber meets the road. How do you do this? How do you move away from what we have now towards a more nationalistic bent? How do you do it? You can't just hold a gun at people's faces and say, get out of my country. That's ugly. I don't want any part of that. I'm all about positivity, positive change, not negative enforcement. I think that always backfires. Everybody from hateful racist bigots that, spit at Muslims or whatever, to people that shoot up mosques and churches, that is all ugly, destructive behavior, and you're not furthering the cause if you think you are. If you think that shooting up a mosque or being rude to people that are in your town is going to amount to any positive, long-lasting change, you are wrong. That's not how it works. Whenever you persecute people, especially those that have a strong religious bent, they double down and they get harder and sharper and will fight you stronger than ever. So, how do you do this? How do you make positive nationalistic change come about without doing things that would violate the NAP or universally preferable behavior, for example? You create incentives and disincentives that are completely optional. First of all, you start creating incentives on big business and small business alike. You give tax breaks, incentives for those who will bring jobs and manufacturing back to your nation. This would be great for America, for example. You give incentives to stop H-1B and H-2B visas. You say, hey, local business, local farm in Mississippi or whatever, or a big tech company in San Diego or San Francisco, for example. Stop importing these people to work for visas, and for the price differential that you claim that you would save for hiring these people, we will give you that exact amount as a tax break. But it's only for 1 year, right? So they are encouraged to phase out people that they're going to be bringing in on visa and encouraged to hire locally. Now, that's not going to last forever. The program would be 1 year, 3 years, whatever, right? But you are incentivizing a business to stay what the business is, to employ the same amount of people, to keep doing the same work, but you provide both local government and federal government incentives for them to focus their not just their workforce, but their manufacturing and employment in the nation that they're in, preferably in the city and the state that they're in, because I think that even works on a more localized level. Moving on just beyond businesses, let's talk about people themselves. This is where the ethno-nationalism part comes into nationalism. We'll get to civics last. The ethno-nationalism part are the people themselves. This doesn't necessarily mean race, but it often has a racial component like we talked about earlier. When you look at the statistics on immigrants, which I'm not even going to throw up a few on the screen, there's too many to go into. Basically, immigrants that come that are first generation in the era of capitalism, a noticeable chunk of them have very little to no experience with the language or the culture of the wealthier, more technologically advanced nation they come into. Some of them do, of course. This is not total by any means, but you want to disincentivize the volume of people that are not part of the nation itself. And you do that by looking for ethnicity. That doesn't mean race, but it often does. For example, if we are going to import a lot of people, perhaps it would be wisest in America to import people who speak English well, have learned English from a young age, like people in Germany and Sweden, to import people that already grew up in Christian or Christian-like or Catholic families, who are used to being around the trappings of society and behaving under the mix of British common law and American constitutional law that most of us in the West are comfortable with and used to. That is a much healthier, more holistic type of immigrant to bring into the fold of America than someone from Somalia, for example, who comes from a war-torn place that has almost no rule of law, and you get whatever, and you take whatever you can get away with. You have wildly violent sects of Islam, like the Daibandi Muslims, that just are riddled throughout different parts of Africa. You're bringing people in, if you bring them in from an area like that are of a wildly disparate ethnicity. And yes, race is a part of that, of course, but that doesn't make you racist to point these things out. If a white person grew up, let's say, in a place that was mostly lawless, and they didn't respect anything based on Christian values or British common law or American constitutional law, and they were from a family of violent pirates, I would not want that person with white skin being prioritized as an immigrant either. So race is always a component, but it's not a hard and fast designator of who should and shouldn't be a part of a society. A good example is the phrase that a lot of those on the left or black identitarians use, the phrase Uncle Tom. Now, that is a loaded phrase that's meant several things, but this is just a single example. If a black person within America can be a champion or an ally of white folks and an enemy of the black folks, both groups being identitarian over race, then clearly, just by ontological proof, race is not the only distinction of ethnicity, although it is a major factor. So when you look at who you're going to bring into your economy, you want to make sure that you bring in people that are going to be productive, rather natural fits for that society, for that community. Because the community needs to be healthy and functional and safe in order to have a productive, internal-based economy, manufacturing, trade, service industry, whatever. So that's the ethnic part of what is good for the economy of nationalism. Now, to wrap this up, the last part, we'll talk about civics, the civic part. We already mentioned earlier that civics, politics, is downstream from culture. The more people that you bring into an area that are disparate, that are ethnically different, if you bring in too much of them at once, they do not have the pressure on them to conform and change. And that's why we're seeing such disparate values in ethnically diverse cities in America. In England, for example, London is no longer an English city. And arguably, if it ever was, Los Angeles is no longer an American city. New York's always kind of been a shithole. It's always been New York. The more people you bring in, the more time that it takes to force those people to adapt to the society via civics. Now, eventually, I do believe that an immigrant can become a part of the nation, of the national, let's call it organism, of the national organism. Now, does that mean they have to racially match? Not necessarily, but it often does help, because in psychology and neurology, it's proven over and over again that we have a natural onboard in-group bias. Little babies, of course, they haven't been taught anything about racism and religion and all that stuff yet. Babies and little children have naturally more positive responses to other humans that look like them. So, of course, race is always going to be a component of it, but I think if you get lost in the value of race itself, you're being just as disingenuous and missing the point of nationalism as the civ-nats do when they act like race doesn't matter at all. So, here I am at the end of this saying that bringing in people too many and too fast means that you are supplanting the people of the nation and all that has made them that nation. And if you do that fast enough, then those people are the ones that are going to start calling the shots in your civics. And that's why so many ethno-nats and hardcore nats say that civ-nats are part of the problem and just as bad as liberals. Is because they see no difference. Like, oh, you can import people and just teach them our ways, and as long as they abide by our laws, it's fine. Well, no, it's not really fine. Because if you import people that abide by your laws and you supplant a third of your population with them and they all vote for socialism, well, all of a sudden you have socialism and all your values are gone. Goodbye, Constitution. Goodbye, personal liberties. So you have to really be careful about that. Too much immigration is always bad for any nation. So I'm going to wrap that up there because that's the 4 main points. I get heated talking about this. I need to calm down. Much better. So, in summary, I believe that the phrase ethno-nationalism is a leftist socialist dog whistle. It is a globalist tool to villainize everyone who cares about their nation and their people, whether you be black, white, Christian, or Muslim. I also believe that globalists in general likely aren't even knowledgeable of the systemic evil that they represent. That's why I am not quick to jump on the bandwagon of let's hate the small hats and everything is a Zionist plot. I don't really truck with that bandwagon. I do believe that there's some truth and credibility, especially when you look into the shady history of how the state of Israel has well, that'll be a different video if I ever do it. Moving on. I think that if we take a healthy look at humanity itself and what has led to the massive prosperity on planet Earth in the last 200 years, you will see that it is nationalism. It is the binding thread of every successful nation and people. Because remember, people are the nation. Civics comes afterwards. So, now we've come to the end of my hopefully enjoyable presentation of Eunuch Corner Club tonight. Please let me know in the comments about my 4 points I bring up. Let me know if there's something important that I left out that you'd like me to cover in future discussions. Or if you'd like to tell me just how insufferable Britisher's recent video was, leave that in the comments too. I do like you, Britisher. You're funny and entertaining, and I do like some of the stuff you say. So let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, share this video to people who you think will enjoy it, or people who you think will be inflamed by what I say, because friction is good. Everybody needs to reach outside of their echo chamber and hear some conflicting ideas that make them uncomfortable. Lord knows we all could benefit from that. So, with that being said, I hope that you all will join me next time and look forward to another couple of episodes of Colonist and a Brit Get Along, because Kizza and I had a very lengthy conversation yesterday and it went quite well. So, that being said, I wish all of you the best. Peace and profits.